It was supposed to be a quiet Sunday in Hollow Creek, a town so small even storms passed it by without stopping. At 11:47 p.m., the bells of St. Mary's rang out for the final time. People say the sound started to bend halfway through the toll, stretching into a long metallic wail that made dogs howl and windows vibrate. Then of silence. No echo, no wind, just a thick, unnatural stillness that blanketed the town like a curse. From the hill across the valley, old Samuel Green swore he saw a beam of white light pour down from the clouds, pinning the church in a pillar of blinding brilliance. But no one believed him. He'd been drinking again. By morning, the church stood empty. The doors were open, candles still burning, the sermon papers fluttering in the pews. But the 3 pastors who lived there were gone. No struggle, no blood. Just 3 pairs of shoes lined neatly beside the altar, as if they'd stepped out of them and vanished. The police wrote it off as a disappearance, but that night, every clock in Hollow Creek stopped at 11:47, and on the church steeple, engraved by something sharp and hot, was a single, alien symbol that no one could translate. The 3 men who vanished, Father Raymond, Father Joseph, and Father Elias, had served at St. Mary's for years. To the townspeople, they were symbols of peace, but behind closed doors, they shared a secret they'd sworn never to speak of again. It began when a tunnel was discovered beneath the altar during renovations, a tunnel carved into stone far older than the church itself. Inside it, they found symbols glowing faintly in the dark, symbols that pulsed when they prayed. Father Raymond thought it was divine. Father Joseph called it dangerous. Father Elias said it was both. They sealed the tunnel and made a pact. Silence, forever. But forever didn't last. Strange lights began appearing during Mass. Sermons were interrupted by whispers echoing through the walls. One by one, they started changing. Their eyes lost colour. Their voices grew slower, deeper. Parishioners said their prayers no longer sounded holy. They sounded like invitations. Days before the incident, a handwritten note appeared in the confession booth. We tried to serve God, but something else answered first. The recording begins at 10:03 p.m. The church nearly empty. Father Raymond standing before the altar. He's preaching to no one, his voice trembling but clear. They've come again. I thought it was angels once, but no, they remember us. In the footage, the air behind him distorts, like heat above asphalt. A tall, flickering silhouette takes shape. Father Raymond doesn't turn around. He keeps talking. I opened the door beneath the altar. I shouldn't have. I heard them sing, and now they're inside me. The lights in the church flicker violently. A low hum fills the room. Then Raymond's body jerks as if pulled by invisible wires. He lifts into the air, crucifix style, and the recording cuts off with a single flash of white. When investigators arrived, they found no body, only a blackened circle on the floor where he stood, perfectly round and warm to the touch, hours after the power went out. Later, the town electricians swore the church had no power line running through that part of the floor. Whatever caused that burn didn't come from beneath. It came from above. The townspeople of Hollow Creek gathered inside St. Mary's that Wednesday night, uneasy, whispering, pretending to pray. Father Raymond's disappearance had rattled everyone, but Father Joseph insisted on holding Mass. Faith, he said, is stronger than fear. He was wrong. The church lights flickered as he spoke, and the candle flames wavered, though there was no breeze. Every pew creaked in rhythm, slow like something moving underneath them. People started glancing around. Some left quietly, others froze, caught in that strange silence again. Then a child in the front row pointed toward the altar. "Mommy," he whispered, "why is that man standing behind Father Joseph?" Everyone turned. Behind the cross, in the space where candlelight should have cast shadow, stood a tall, thin figure. Its body shimmered like glass filled with smoke, stretching and collapsing in impossible shapes. The figure leaned forward and the lights snapped off. Screams echoed through the church, then stopped all at once. When the lights came back on, Father Joseph was gone. The congregation fled, trampling each other in panic. Investigators found no trace of him. No blood, no footprints. Only the massive wooden cross that hung behind him had been bent, as if gripped by inhuman hands. On the floor below it, a pool of water shimmered faintly, giving off light from no known source. For the first time, Hollow Creek began to believe this wasn't human. That night, one of the children who'd been there woke up screaming. His mother rushed to him. The boy was pointing at the ceiling, crying. It followed me home, he sobbed. It's watching from the light. 2 nights later, Father Elias walked into the confession booth at 3:14 a.m., alone. The storm outside drowned the sound of thunder, but the church recorder, an old tape system, caught every word. "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned," he began, his voice trembling. "But I don't think you're the one listening anymore." For 5 minutes, there was silence. Then came another voice. It wasn't male or female, not even human. It was layered, like hundreds of whispers speaking in unison through static. "We remember you, Elias. Your kind prayed to the sky." "We fell to the ground," Elias began sobbing, pounding the wooden wall between the booths. "Why the church? Why us? Because you built it on our grave." A deep, metallic hum grew in the background, shaking the structure. The tape warped, skipping seconds. When it stabilized again, the booth was empty. The door had been torn from its hinges, yet from the inside out. The next morning, the janitor found the tape still running, the words repeating in reverse. Investigators who listened claimed they heard their own names whispered faintly behind the playback. Father Elias's body was never found, but above the booth, carved into the wood, were 3 interlocked rings, the same alien symbol that had first appeared on the church steeple. That was the night the Vatican sent their first team to Hollow Creek. By the end of that week, Hollow Creek was no longer on the map, literally. GPS systems couldn't locate it. Online records vanished. Even weather satellites showed nothing but static where the town should have been. But the old-timers remembered. They said Hollow Creek wasn't always Hollow Creek. Before the church was built, the land was called Sunder Field, named after a meteor crash 300 years ago. A starstone, they called it, that split the earth open and burned for 3 days. The locals back then had worshipped the crater, believing it was where God touched the world. What no one knew was that the crater wasn't empty. It was buried, forgotten, until St. Mary's Church was built directly above it. Journalist Amelia Cross came digging into this history after hearing about the missing pastors. The more she uncovered, the stranger it became. Missing construction workers, unmarked graves under the chapel, and an old church record sealed with wax. Inside it read, "If the lights return, seal the ground. Do not let them sing again." But the lights had returned. And now, every night at 11:47, the town's horizon shimmered, as if the sky itself were cracking open again. Residents reported hearing faint chanting from beneath the earth, in a language no one knew. One farmer swore he saw figures walking through the mist toward the church, their bodies tall, pale, and flickering in and out of existence, like memories too old to hold shape. The town was forgetting itself. Piece by piece, names, faces, roads, even memories, as if something ancient beneath them was erasing every trace of who they were. When the Vatican team arrived, they didn't come in robes. They came in hazmat suits. The order was clear: excavate beneath St. Mary's. They worked for 2 days under silence, cameras off, doors locked. On the 3rd night, one of them, Brother Calhoun, ran screaming into the rain, his eyes bleeding light. He kept repeating a single phrase before collapsing. "There's another church under it, built upside down." What they found beneath St. Mary's was impossible. An inverted chapel, identical in architecture but made entirely of black stone. Its walls pulsed faintly, like veins under skin. The floor, or what should have been the ceiling, was carved with symbols that shifted when light touched them. At the center stood an altar made of crystal, cracked open like an egg. Inside it, bones. But the bones weren't human. They were too long, too thin, too perfect. Father Anton, the lead investigator, whispered, "We didn't build this, we buried it." As the team examined the carvings, one symbol matched the steeple mark, 3 interlocked rings. When they placed a flashlight on it, the whole chamber vibrated, and a sound filled the air. A low hum that didn't echo. It grew. Outside, the bells of the real church began to ring, on their own. When they fled the site, one camera was left behind, still recording. The final frame showed shadows moving in the black stone walls, as if the church itself had begun to breathe. By now, the people of Hollow Creek had stopped sleeping. Those who closed their eyes saw flashes, a burning white light, and figures reaching through it. Doctors called it collective trauma. But when people started waking up with burn marks shaped like crosses on their chests, explanations ran out fast. One survivor described the experience on video before she vanished. The light doesn't hurt your skin, it hurts your memories. It burns who you were. Witnesses claimed the beams followed them. From windows, mirrors, even puddles. When the light touched them, their reflections disappeared for a moment, as if the world forgot they existed. One night, Amelia Cross, the journalist, ventured into St. Mary's ruins with a UV scanner. The readings went wild, radiation, heat and electromagnetic pulses all at once. Then she saw it. A column of light, moving like liquid, pulsing in rhythm with a faint sound. A choir of distorted human voices. They weren't screaming, they were praying. The next morning, Amelia's camera was found outside the church, still recording. The last frame showed her silhouette dissolving into the light, her outline stretching into thin, radiant strands before vanishing completely. When the video was reviewed, technicians found something horrifying in the final second. A new figure stepped out of the light, wearing her face. Weeks before the disappearances began, an old nun named Sister Margaret had tried to warn them. She lived alone on the outskirts, surrounded by shelves of dusty journals and broken rosaries. When Amelia first visited her, the nun didn't open the door. She whispered through it. "They came for me once when I was a child." The light sang to me. I sang back. Margaret revealed that she had grown up inside St. Mary's orphanage, back when the church first started hearing the songs from the floor. She'd seen the pastors dig, seen the symbols glow, seen men vanish in beams of colour that came from beneath, not above. In her diary, she'd written, "The lights are not from heaven, they're from the ground, waiting for someone to answer." She begged Amelia not to go near the church, but before Amelia left, Margaret handed her a small glass vial filled with black dust. "When the singing starts," she said, "break this. It's from the stone that fell." 3 days later, when investigators returned to question her again, the house was empty. The windows were melted, and on her wall, written in ash, "Heaven was never up there. It was always down here." It started with the telescopes. Across the country, observatories reported the same impossible reading. An unknown object, hovering exactly above Hollow Creek, motionless, silent, and invisible to radar, only visible through infrared. At 11:47 every night, the same time the bells had gone silent, the object pulsed once. Like a heartbeat, the Vatican's astronomy division, Specula Vaticana, released no public statement, but leaked footage showed their top analysts standing over satellite images of Hollow Creek. One whispered, "It's not in orbit, it's anchored." Residents began reporting the same dream, standing beneath a sky split open like glass, watching a massive shape glide above the clouds, moving as if alive. Some woke screaming, others didn't wake at all. That's when the rain changed. It fell in threads of silver light, soft, shimmering, and warm to the touch. But it wasn't water. The droplets crystallized upon contact with soil, forming symbols, the same 3 rings seen on the church steeple and beneath the altar. Scientists from neighboring towns rushed to investigate, but their electronics failed near Hollow Creek. Cameras glitched, compasses spun. From miles away, they could see it, the faint outline of something vast suspended over the church, bending the stars around it. One night, as lightning struck the steeple, the object responded, sending down a single beam that lit the entire valley white. The sound that followed wasn't thunder, it was a chorus. Thousands of overlapping voices whispering the same phrase. "Your prayers reached us." And then, just as suddenly, silence again. But for those who heard the voice, their eyes began to glow faintly in the dark. After the beam incident, Vatican officials ordered the church sealed, but one of the men on the cleanup crew, Officer Drew Halser, stole a small leather journal from Father Raymond's quarters. It was titled The Visitors. Inside were sermons that no one had ever heard, pages written in a mix of Latin, English, and a language no expert could identify. One entry stood out. "They came to me as light, said they were messengers of the first heaven. They spoke of salvation, a promise of ending hunger, war, pain. But when I prayed with them, I felt nothing holy, only hunger, theirs." Further pages revealed that the 3 pastors had conducted secret rituals under the church. Mass without congregation, he called it. Using sound, frequencies and light patterns from the symbols, he wrote that the beings taught them how to open the gate of communion, but required something in return: memory. They feed on what makes us us. Each prayer, each confession, each sin, a piece of memory they take. That is their sacrament. The last entry was written the night before Raymond's death. Tomorrow, we open the gate fully. They promised a new dawn. If this is not heaven, may God forgive me for mistaking it. When the Vatican examined the journal, they found faint radiation burns on the pages, as if the words themselves had been written with light. That night, Officer Halser burned the book in his yard, but by morning, it was back on his table, untouched by fire. It happened on a Thursday morning. The sun rose over Hollow Creek for the last time. By noon, half the town was gone. Cars stood abandoned mid-road. Breakfast still simmered on stoves. Phones recorded static-filled voicemails, whispers, sobbing, sometimes faint hymns sung backward. CCTV footage from the gas station caught the moment it began. People walking suddenly froze mid-step, eyes rolling white as faint beams of light rose from their bodies. Vertical streams that merged into the clouds. Then they were gone. Those who witnessed it said it wasn't abduction, it was invitation. They said the people didn't scream. They smiled. By the time investigators arrived, Hollow Creek felt like a graveyard. The church bell rang on its own every 11 minutes, and from beneath the floorboards came that same hum, like something still moving underground. In the mayor's office, one final letter was found. It was addressed to no one. They said they came for faith. But faith is just the key. What they wanted was our memory of God, because without it, they can become Him. That night, the last lights of Hollow Creek went out. From the sky, satellites captured one final image, a perfect circle of glowing symbols surrounding St. Mary's Church, forming what looked like an open eye staring straight upward, and in its pupil, a beam of light rising, pulsing once, then fading into space. The church doors were sealed, yet somehow the baptismal font began to fill again. No rain had fallen, no pipes were connected, and the well beneath Hollow Creek had long dried up. Still, the stone basin brimmed with liquid, clear at first, then slowly shifting crimson, as if the water were remembering something. The Vatican's containment team took samples. They expected iron, rust, perhaps contamination. Instead, the analysis returned one word: organic. Not blood, not exactly, but something alive, a fluid that reacted to light, pulsing in time with the church's faint humming. Late that night, a young priest, Father Miles, stayed behind to pray over the font. He whispered a blessing, dipped his hand in, and screamed. Witnesses found him hours later outside the chapel, shaking violently, repeating, "It showed me him, but he wasn't what I thought." The next morning, the water was gone, dried completely. But inside the basin, microscopic symbols were etched into the stone, moving, shifting, rearranging like living scripture. Scientists watched them align into words visible only under UV light: baptized by us, remembered by none. Within 48 hours, anyone who had entered the church fell ill. Their eyes turned milky white, their veins faintly glowing under the skin. And those who dreamed saw the same image: a vast ocean of red light stretching beyond the stars, with figures kneeling in the water, whispering prayers in reverse. The Vatican sealed the font in steel and moved it to a classified facility, but the steel rusted overnight. Inside, the font was empty again, except for a single handprint pressed into the stone, still warm. After the disappearances, the stained glass windows of St. Mary's became the town's last remaining beauty, radiant in color, even as the rest of Hollow Creek decayed. But the light shining through them no longer matched the sun. At dawn, the glass would glow on its own, casting strange shapes across the floor. At first it seemed random, abstract, beautiful even. Then one day, a beam fell upon a broken pew and formed words, a message. "We remember your songs." Technicians brought in thermal scanners, trying to decode how the light moved. The readings made no sense. The glow came from inside the glass, as if something were looking through it, not the other way around. And then one night, the windows sang, every panel vibrated softly, producing a low harmonic tone that rose into a haunting melody. The sound wasn't mechanical, it was human. Hundreds of voices layered together, crying, whispering, pleading. When they recorded the sound and played it backward, a clear phrase emerged: Open the gate, he waits below. Moments later, all glass in the building cracked, not shattered, but splintered into the shape of an enormous eye staring downward. A witness outside claimed he saw silhouettes move within the glass itself, figures walking behind the panels, as if trapped inside them. After that night, no one entered St. Mary's again, but at sunrise, the church walls still shimmered, the glass whispering faintly in the wind, and every reflection in town, every mirror, every window, began to hum that same melody, as if the whole world had become their choir. Weeks later, an encrypted file leaked from a hidden Vatican drive, titled Sermon 17, The New Gospel. It was a recording of Father Elias before his death, standing at the altar, reciting words that no human language could contain. His eyes were black, his body trembling, but his tone calm, commanding. "They are not from the stars," he said softly. "They were here before the light. We mistook their hunger for holiness. We called them angels, but they called us seeds." The sermon described a covenant of remembrance, that the aliens didn't just observe humanity, they built it, planting fragments of their essence into human DNA thousands of years ago. And now, through faith, prayer, and worship, humans had unknowingly been feeding that connection, reawakening their creators through collective memory. Elias's voice grew louder, his veins glowing as if light flowed through them. The final mass is near. When the bells ring again, the gate will open, and all faith will return to its source. The video ended abruptly as the church lights burst in a flash of white, but one frame remained. In the final second, just before the camera melted, a shape appeared behind him. A towering figure of radiant bones and shifting flesh, its face an endless loop of mirrored human expressions. It wasn't alien. It was us, multiplied, distorted, divine. The file was immediately classified the Forbidden Sermon. Every copy erased, every witness silenced, but the message was already out, and somewhere deep beneath the ruins of Hollow Creek, the bells began to ring again. It began on the outskirts of Hollow Creek, at the old elementary school. The town was half deserted, but a few families still refused to leave. Their children were the first to see it. At 10:12 a.m., during morning prayers, the classroom windows turned white. The kids pressed their faces to the glass, eyes wide. One little girl whispered, "The clouds are breaking." Outside, the sky split open, not with lightning, but with silence. A single line of light stretched from horizon to horizon, like a wound bleeding brightness. The air shimmered, gravity bent, birds froze mid-flight. The children watched as something enormous moved behind the light, slow, deliberate, like a shape seen through water. Their teacher, Mrs. Lindor, tried to pull them away, but her voice became distorted, each word echoing 3 times before fading. The world around her slowed. Then, the line in the sky opened wider, revealing a vast surface pulsing with veins of gold. Not metal, not clouds, but something alive. The kids began to hum, a single note, low, trembling. Every child in the room hummed the exact same pitch, their eyes glowing faintly with pale blue light. Security footage showed them standing perfectly still as desks and papers floated into the air around them. Outside, power lines arced with electricity. When the light finally dimmed, the children collapsed, unharmed, but silent. Doctors later found symbols burned into their irises, 3 interlocked rings, perfectly symmetrical. When asked what they saw, one boy whispered, "It wasn't the sky that opened, it was the thing behind it, finally waking up." 3 hours after the children's incident, unmarked trucks rolled into Hollow Creek. No flags, no insignias, just white vans and men in clean, featureless suits. They sealed the entire town in under an hour. Residents who remained were gathered in the school gym, forced to hand over phones, cameras, and any evidence of the phenomenon. The men didn't speak. They used gestures, short radio clicks, and cold precision. One woman tried to escape through the old cemetery road. They caught her within minutes. Her body was found later near the church gates, eyes wide open, no wounds, her entire body drained of color like a photograph faded by light. The agents established a base around St. Mary's ruins. From their command tents came strange sounds, humming, not mechanical, not electrical, Some locals claimed they were trying to communicate with it. Others said they were worshipping it. A captured radio transmission leaked from within the zone. Containment impossible. Subject is non-terrestrial, non-temporal. Light pulse at 47-minute intervals. DNA resequencing detected in water supply. That night, a drone recorded something hovering over the command tents. A faint ring of light circling slowly, shifting shape like smoke under glass. When the drone descended, its feed cut out. By dawn, all the agents were gone. Their tents stood empty, equipment melted into the ground. In the center of the camp was a symbol burned into the dirt. 3 interlocked rings, surrounding a single human handprint, glowing faintly from beneath the soil. The government denied the event ever happened, but satellite photos leaked days later showed Hollow Creek had changed. The entire area glowed faintly blue at night, as if something beneath it was alive and breathing. After months of silence, the Vatican sent a final envoy, Father Bennett, a man known for performing exorcisms in war zones. He arrived with one purpose: to reopen St. Mary's and drive out whatever claimed it. By then, the church was half buried in luminous ash. The air itself vibrated. Inside, Bennett found the altar cracked open, the baptismal font gone, and walls breathing with faint light patterns. He began the ritual of resurrection, not for the dead pastors, but for the church itself. Candles ignited on their own. Pages of scripture turned as if moved by wind. His voice echoed, layered with something else. Deeper, resonant, ancient. "I cast you out," he cried. "Return to the pit from which you came." The walls responded. A deafening hum rose. And then, a figure stepped from the altar's shadow. It was Father Raymond, or what was left of him. His body shimmered, translucent, veins glowing like lightning beneath glass. His eyes were gone, replaced by hollow light. "You don't understand," Raymond said. "It's not possession. It's awakening." Bennett tried to finish the prayer, but his words fell apart mid-sentence. His voice was replaced by another, dozens of others, speaking through him, forming one unified, inhuman tone. Faith was the door. You were the key. The altar exploded in white fire. When it cleared, Bennett was gone. Only a circle of scorched ash remained, and carved into the stone beneath it, 3 words: "He has risen." But the resurrection wasn't divine. That night, the church's shadow stretched across the entire valley, moving even when there was no light. And deep within that shadow, something began to take shape. Something not quite human, and not yet complete. The night the bells rang again, the entire valley woke up. Hollow Creek, long erased from maps, glowed from horizon to horizon. A perfect ring of light circled the ruins of St. Mary's, pulsing like a heartbeat. The few survivors who had refused to leave gathered at the edge of town. Among them was Amelia Cross's brother, Nathan, a former skeptic who'd spent months searching for her. He stood in the rain, clutching her recovered camera, whispering her name. Then the bells began, slow, distorted, as if time itself were bending with each toll. One by one, people dropped to their knees, not from fear, but awe. Above them, the clouds parted and the shape emerged, vast, radiant, shifting, a being woven of light and shadow, its body made of memories, human faces flickering across its form like echoes of forgotten souls. The earth trembled. The church ruins lifted from the ground, the stones rearranging mid-air into a perfect circle, a halo of living architecture. In the center, a doorway opened, a rift, breathing light. Nathan heard a voice. Hers, Amelia's. "You can still choose, Nate. You can pray, or remember." He dropped the camera and stepped forward, tears cutting through the ash on his face. Around him, the others began reciting scripture. But their words twisted mid-air, turning into the same alien harmonics that once came from the glass. "In faith we were born," the voices cried, "and in light we are returned." The sky bled gold. Nathan reached the glowing gate and saw her standing inside. Amelia, radiant, human but not, her body flickering like a reflection in rippling water. She reached out a hand. "Come home." But he shook his head. Home is where memory stays. And with that, Nathan recited his own prayer. Not to God, but to humanity, a defiant whisper against eternity. "Let us remember who we are. The light screamed, a sound of pain and rage. The sky shattered like glass, raining shards of brilliance. The valley went dark. The bells stopped. When dawn came, the light was gone. And Nathan lay at the altar's edge, whispering one final word before dying. Free. Days later, a rescue team entered the ruins of Hollow Creek. What they found didn't make sense. The town was completely still. Every structure frozen mid-collapse, as if time had paused during its final breath. Inside St. Mary's, where the altar once stood, they found a smooth surface of black stone, reflective like liquid, solid to the touch. Etched upon it in faint silver lines were words written in no known language. When translated through pattern mapping, the message became clear. We were never gods, only their mistakes. The team collected the artifact, sealed it in a containment crate, and airlifted it to a classified facility. But during the flight, the pilot reported strange interference. The clouds above began to form rings of light. The black stone pulsed faintly. A voice came through the radio. Not from the pilot, not from ground control. We remember your faith. It built us, it fed us, it will bring us back. Then the signal cut out. The plane vanished from radar. Months later, in a distant monastery, a priest sweeping the floor found something strange. An old rosary, tangled in ash. When he picked it up, the cross glowed briefly, and faint whispers filled the air. He knelt, listening. The whispers weren't prayers. They were names, thousands of them spoken all at once. The names of everyone who had vanished from Hollow Creek. He fled to the chapel, trembling, shouting for his brothers. But when they arrived, the rosary had melted into the stone floor, leaving behind only a faint symbol. 3 interlocked rings. That night, the monastery bells rang on their own, 11 times, then silence. And far above the earth, unseen by any telescope, something vast drifted through the void, a shadow shaped like a church, carrying the faint echo of human prayer through the darkness. The story of Hollow Creek became a myth, a cautionary tale, a forgotten hymn. But if you stand outside on a quiet night and listen to the wind, you can still hear the faint sound of bells, ringing for the faithful who looked to heaven and found something staring back.